at least a little familiar with the incredible events that took place on October 13th, 1917 in Fatima, Portugal. For those of you who are not, well, here's a brief introduction. At noon on October 13th, 1917, a crowd of between 40 and 100,000 people, including the three Fatima seers, Lucia dos Santos, Francisco Marto, and Jacinta Marto. They witnessed an event so shocking, news of it spread across the world. The event was so incredible, it has cemented itself as one of, if not the most credible, examples of modern miracle known to man. These witnesses gathered in a large, rain-soaked field, saw the noonday sun roll from left to right, dancing out of its predictable orbit, then drew close to the crowd, stopping above a small tree in the middle of the field. While it moved, the sun changed colors, changing from yellow to red and every other color in the rainbow. Then it returned back to yellow as it drew close to the tree. The witnesses all claim to have been able to look at the sun without pain. The sun was so hot that the field was reported to have dried within minutes. And the thousands of people who witnessed this event all claim to have left the area that day with their rain-soaked clothes completely dry. How did this happen? Why was Fatima, Portugal chosen to be the location of such an incredible event? Central to this miracle were the three Fatima seers, Lucia, Francesco, and Jacinta, who received visitations from the Blessed Virgin Mary. Their stories have been told many times and heard by millions of believers. However, their stories are only part of the incredible event. There were thousands of secret witnesses to the Fatima miracle, each of whose eyewitness reports dispel some of the mysteries behind this miracle. Come with me now as we explore this great mystery and meet the secret witnesses of Fatima. This is Dominic Reyes, an American citizen from Holyoke, Massachusetts, who was living with his father and mother near Porto, Portugal at the time of the miracle. Porto, Portugal was the second largest city in Portugal at the time, and one of the Iberian Peninsula's major urban areas. Many of the households of witnesses to the October 13th miracle lived in or around Porto and made the over 100-mile journey from Porto to Fatima to witness the event. Many of the witnesses to the miracle experienced the event from over 600 miles away. We will explore what they saw later in the series. For now, one of these things that makes Dominic's testimony so compelling is that he was less than half a mile away from the sun as it danced through the sky and eventually settled on the tree in the middle of the field. Dominic was interviewed on television in the early 1960s by the author of the book, John Hafford, that much of this series is based on.
And then the sun started roll like dancing from one place to another place. And we see the sun come towards where the shield and where the tree.
What follows is an exact transcript of this interview.
Did you hear that a miracle was predicted to take place at Fatima?
My father heard of it first. It was in papers all over the country.
How far from Fatima do you live, Dominic?
I lived at that time near Porto, over 100 miles away.
Were there very many people interested?
Yes. Suppose I explain from the beginning. I was 17 in May when it all began. Then in October on the 11th, 1917, my father said to my mother, "We're going to Fatima. We're going to see what happens." Lots of people thought it was a lie. The government didn't believe it either. But lots of people, like my father and mother, were all sensible in religion. My father said, "We're going up." On the 12th, we left at 9 o'clock. Here in Dominic's testimony, we see evidence that the local government surrounding Fatima were resistant to the idea of any citizens traveling to see a miracle being performed. In 1910, Portugal was swept with a revolution that placed an atheistic, communistic form of government in control of Portugal. By 1919, when the miracle of the sun happened, this government had ruled for 7 years and taught that religion was the opiate of the masses. It was terrified of the threat that a unified Catholic Portugal posed to their rule.
Were there many people from your area that went to Fatima?
Yes, the train was full.
Was the prediction of this miracle announced in the church?
The church said nothing at all. They were against it. If any priest said anything about Fatima, even maybe something would happen to him. Some churches in the area of Fatima were marred, stones thrown, anything to break down the coming of the people.
When did you finally get to the cova?
We got there around noontime, between 11:30 to around noontime. When we finally got there were soldiers. Everywhere we saw animals, trees, bushes. Very rough. And this National Guard, what we would call weekend soldiers, tried to stop us from going down into the cova. The cova that Dominic is talking about is the Cova da Iria. Today it is the site of the sanctuary of Our Lady of Fatima, but in 1917 it was the rain-soaked field that served as the stage of Our Lady's miracle of the sun. In this diagram you can see the spot of the apparition and the tree under which the three seers stood. Using the testimony from our secret witnesses, we know exactly where many of them stood as they witnessed the miracle. This is where Dominic stood next to his family in the cova.
The crowd was too great for the soldiers to hold?
The crowd was breaking in one corner. When the soldiers moved to protect that corner, another corner broke out. First thing you know, everybody got through.
Did the soldiers finally give up?
What happened because they couldn't control the crowd.
So, you finally got down into the cova with the crowd. And where did you go?
We got close to the tree where the children were. The 3 children we had heard about were already there. These 3 children Dominic is mentioning were the 3 Fatima seers, Lucia dos Santos, Francesca, and Jacinta Marto. They had witnessed several miracles and visitations from heaven before this day in October 1917, and word of them has started to spread across Portugal, drawing the enormous crowds that joined Dominic in the cova on October 13th. On this side was a big tree, and the little small trees around, and the children were there, and now it was raining harder. There was a good 3 inches of water where I stood, and mud on the ground.
3 inches of water on the ground?
Yes, 3 inches of water on the ground. I was soaking wet. Then, around noontime, the sun started breaking. We could see the sun. Now, it was raining, just like you open a faucet at your house. Rain. And then suddenly the rain stopped. The sun started to roll from one place to another place and changed to blue, yellow, all colors. We see the sun come toward the children, toward the tree. Everybody was hollering out. Some started to confess their sins. Even my mother grabbed me to her and started to cry, saying, "It is the end of the world." The secret witnesses that we have called to the stand today serve a purpose. We'll take an in-depth look at the testimonies of 3 individuals who bore witness to the miracle of the sun. These 3 have very dissimilar backgrounds and lifestyles, but when they were asked about what they saw on that fateful day on October 13th, their answers were eerily identical. Now, let's start this retelling of events where any good story starts, with a baron's sister, a farmer, and a wealthy man. On August 1st, 1917, the Baron of Alvazaire learned of the heroism of the children of Fatima in the prison of Orem in Portugal. The Baron had not believed in the apparitions before, but he became a very important witness to the miracle of the sun. After the death of Francesco in 1919, he helped to send the dying Jacinta to Lisbon in the hope of saving her life by an operation. When Jacinta died, the Baron of Alvazaire had her little body brought back to Orem and placed in his family's tomb, where it remained until long after the Fatima apparitions had been approved by the church. Among the numerous depositions which we have obtained from this book is that of the Baron's sister Maria Celeste de Camare et Vasconcelos, who now is living on the family property in Orem. At the time of the miracle, she was on the old road with relatives and friends overlooking the cova.
Did you think that anything might happen, madam?
I expect that all was a fancy of the poor children, and that we would see nothing.
What happened?
The sun began to spin with circles of every color. It was like a wheel of fireworks, and coming down to the ground.
What was your reaction?
Stupefied.
Did you think it was a miracle?
Yes, there was something supernatural.
Do you know of anyone out there who did not see the miracle?
No.
The reality of this miracle begins to emerge as we patiently listen to one witness after the other, each different yet testifying to the same incredible event. Now we move on to the testimony of the farmer. Jose Joaquin de Asuncio was 71 years old in 1960s and was living at Montelo, Portugal, and at the moment of the miracle, he was standing fairly close to the place of the apparitions, where the fountain is now located. He was with several acquaintances. He had tried to get as good a location as possible. This is what he saw.
The sun began spinning as though in a sort of box. All the people cried, "It comes down! It comes down!" The colors of things seemed different.
How were you dressed, Jose?
I was not dressed in a special way, just as usual. It was raining.
And then you were dry afterwards?
The sun began to come down and all were quickly dried.
What was your personal reaction?
In August, I was more impressed than in October. In August, I went to fetch some pumpkins not very far from the cova when I heard that the children were taken to prison. I decided to go and promised my gold watch and chain if I ever saw the vision. I was so happy, as if I really had seen her. I kept my promise.
Did you know of anyone out there who did not see the miracle?
I never heard that no one saw it. They were all obliged to see, except those who might not look at it.
Already we can't help but notice the similarities in these two testimonies. One of the similarities being that both the Baron's sister and the farmer were excited to see if the rumors were true and wished to believe in them. The third and last witness had a different mindset when he observed the miracle. Let's now turn our attention to what he had to say. Now, Mr. Godhido was a member of an important and distinguished Portuguese family. It is the first testimony we present from a man who was completely skeptical, and it has a surprising conclusion.
Now, I am 67 years old. At this age, there are no more earthly illusions. At this age, one lives with his eyes on eternity. When Our Lady came, I was 25. That was the age of the illusions. It was difficult to me then to think of the supernatural world. We lived at that time in Portugal in a difficult religious and political period. Naturally, I did not believe. I sincerely suppose it was only the imagination of someone. My mother believed from the beginning, however, and asked me to take her in my car to Cova de Iria on the 13th of June. We left the car, jumped over some stones, and met the three shepherds who had lighted their candles in their hands. Other people like us were waiting for the apparition. In front of the children there was a little holm oak tree. They said that on the holm oak Our Lady would appear. At my mother's request, I went once more to the Cova de Iria in August, at the time of the apparitions. Once more I came back discouraged and disappointed. But that time, something extraordinary happened. My mother, who had a large tumor in one of her eyes for so many years, was cured. The doctors who had attended her said they could not explain such a cure. Still, I did not believe in the apparitions. Finally, and again at my mother's request, I went to the cova once more on the 13th of October. Now there were hundreds upon hundreds of people, and many kinds of vehicles. There was a general commotion. In spite of what had happened to my mother, I was disappointed and did not believe in the apparitions. So, I sat in my car, and then, all at once, I noticed that everybody looked at the sky. Naturally, natural curiosity attracted my attention, and I got out of my car and looked at the sky too. I saw in a clear area of sky where one should not be able to stare at the sun, and looked directly at the sun. It was like a disc of smoked glass illuminated behind and turning over itself, giving us the impression that it was coming down upon our heads. I could then see the sun more easily than I can see the moon on a full moon night. From those hundreds of mouths I heard words of belief and of love to the Blessed Virgin. And then, I believed. I was sure I had not been the victim of mere suggestion. I saw the sun as I never saw it again. And that is what I saw concerning the apparitions.
We've come to you today with the recounting of events from witnesses who saw the miracle of the sun from a distance and who were interviewed in the early 1960s by John Hafford, the author of the book that much of this series is based on. Meet Father Lorenco, a mere schoolboy at the time of the miracle. Lorenco was with his brother as well as some other children in the village of Albertel when he bore witness to the incredible miracle of the sun from a distance of 9 miles. They all thought it was the end of the world. Lorenco tells us, "I feel incapable of describing what I saw. I looked fixedly at the sun, which seemed pale and did not hurt my eyes. Looking like a ball of snow revolving on itself, it suddenly seemed to come down in a zigzag, menacing the earth. Terrified, I ran and hid among the people who were weeping and expecting the end of the world at any moment. It was a crowd which had gathered outside our local village school, and we had all left class and ran into the streets because of the cries and surprised shouts of men and women who were in the street in front of the school when the miracle began. There was an unbeliever there who had spent the morning mocking the simpletons who had gone off to Fatima just to see an ordinary girl. He now seemed paralyzed. His eyes fixed on the sun, he began to tremble from head to foot, and lifting up his arms, fell on his knees in the mud, crying out to God. But meanwhile, the people continued to cry out and to weep, asking God to pardon their sins. We all ran to the 2 chapels in the village, which were soon filled to overflowing. During these long moments of the solar prodigy, objects around us turned all colors of the rainbow. When the people realized that the danger was over, there was an explosion of joy. In another retelling of the events, we meet Mr. Albino Barrios, a successful building contractor who was at the time a child in a village near Mindel, about 8 miles from Fatima. Though only 12 years old at the time, he remembers the miracle as though it had happened yesterday.
What were you doing that day?
I was watching sheep, as was my daily task. And suddenly there, in the direction of Fatima, I saw the sun fall from the sky. I thought it was the end of the world.
Was it raining at the time? Were your clothes dry afterwards?
I was so distracted that I remember nothing but the falling sun. I cannot even remember whether I took the sheep home, whether I ran, or what I did.
And the last witness we have the pleasure of hearing from today is Mrs. Gael Hermina Lopez de Silva. Mrs. de Silva had seen the crowds passing through the area in great numbers.
Did you travel to Fatima to see the miracle?
I could not go because my husband was an unbeliever. I was looking toward the mountain at noon when suddenly I saw a great red flash in the sky. I called 2 men who were working for us, and they, of course, saw it too.
Do you know of anyone else who saw the miracle?
One of my relatives, Mr. Luis Lopez from Arabalde de Santa Margarita, went to Fatima and told us afterwards that although he had taken every precaution to avoid the rain, he was soaked through from his feet to his waist. But as the sun came down from the sky, he noticed to his astonishment that he was completely dry. And my former neighbor, Donna Nazare bin Jairo, when she came back from Fatima that day, told me that when she had seen the sun coming down like a spinning wheel, she was so frightened that she fell to her knees, reciting the act of contrition, believing it to be indeed the end of the world.
The phenomenon was not completely visible in Liaria, which was only 16 miles away. Perhaps because of the contour of the land, Fatima is in the midst of Serra Ayada mountains. And although the mountain itself is about 3,000 feet high, even today one has to actually reach the very top of the mountain within a range of 1 mile to see the tower of the basilica, which is at least 65 feet above the average level of the Gova. Yet on the sea level, a tower 65 feet high can be seen from a distance of 14 miles, because only the curvature of the Earth, given adequate illumination and clear atmosphere, limits the range of visibility. But at Fatima, both the angle of the mountain over which the phenomenon occurred and the contour of surrounding mountains limit visibility. Just how high the phenomenon was above the mountain is impossible to determine. There was a factor on this day far more limiting than distance. It had been raining over the entire area. Everything considered, the startling brilliance of the phenomenon seen over such a great area and with such fearful effect upon all who witnessed it must have been something akin to the effect of an atomic explosion. Scientists, historians, and laymen alike have all tried and failed to explain away what was witnessed that day by over 100,000 people. In an effort to debunk the events of October 13th, 1917, many theories, hypotheses, and speculations have arisen around the subject, but nothing has ever made it past just that, theory and speculation. At this point in our series, we have consulted at the minds of the barons, farmers, children, schoolboys, critics, and believers alike. But what about those critical thinking minds? Those free thinkers, those who see things from a practical and logical point of view. And who better than a lawyer to fill that void? A person whose entire professional career depends on the examination of facts and the dismissal of unreliable evidence. How will the testimony of a lawyer, interviewed by author John Haffert in the early 1960s, differ from those who we've heard from before? Will he dismiss what was witnessed and try to explain it away, or embrace the mystery and accept it as an inexplicable phenomenon, unexplainable outside of faith? Let's find out. Meet Carlos Mendez, a successful lawyer in the prime of life, who was 28 years old when the miracle occurred. Carlos was from Torres Novas, about 15 miles from the Cova. When he first went to Fatima in September 1917 on horseback, he explains that it was partly sport and partly curiosity that drew him to that mysterious mountain towering beyond Batahala. Being a spontaneous and active man, Carlos went straight to the home of the 3 Fatima children. He talked and even played with them. He was greatly impressed by their sincerity and deeply touched by a mysterious emotion which he could not altogether define. In his 1960s deposition, he explained, "After the first visit to Fatima in early September, I wrote a letter to my future bride telling her that I was convinced that there was something unusual about the children, and that I was going back to Fatima on the 13th of the month, when the next apparition was expected."
When did you go to Fatima, Mr. Mendez?
There were many thousands of people at Fatima on September 13th, the month before the miracle, and many persons claimed to see a silver rain and other phenomena, but I saw nothing. Then suddenly, the children were getting up and saying it was over. As the crowd advanced to question the children, I pressed through and took Lucia's up in my arms. She cried and said, "Let me alone, let me alone." I felt hurt, but proceeded to deliver her to some of her family. I left Fatima absolutely disillusioned and convinced by the attitude of the children that there was much here to question. If they had just seen and spoken to the Mother of Heaven, I could not understand why they cried and asked to be left alone. I told several people of my disillusionment and publicly declared that I would not go to Fatima on October 13th. My brother Augusto, a medical doctor who is home from the war in France on leave, intended to go, but I persuaded him not to. Another, my brother Candido, had promised to take several persons to Fatima and insisted that I accompany him. I repeatedly refused. Candido and I slept in the same room. At 4 a.m., I heard him getting up to leave for Fatima. I jumped out of bed and, always protesting that I would not go, I went along. At 12 o'clock noon, without knowing how or why, I found myself standing close to the spot of the apparition.
Was there a great crowd there?
There were many persons there, but I felt alone. I was suddenly dominated by the expectation of the great event which the children had foretold, so that everyone might believe. I saw the children arrive, and I saw them kneel down, and was gripped by the impressive silence which fell upon us. It is as real to me now as it was in that moment.
Did you have any idea of what was going to happen?
No, I did not have the slightest idea of what might happen. But now, waiting, I did believe that the sign which the children predicted was going to take place. I heard while the children were talking to the vision, persons around me remarked about different things they saw, but I saw nothing unusual.
What time was it that the children started to talk to the vision?
It might have been at solar noon or a few moments later.
When the people began to shout, did you see anything unusual?
I saw the sun, as if it were a ball of fire, begin to move in the clouds. It had been raining all morning, and the sky was full of clouds, but the rain had stopped. It lasted for several seconds, crushingly pressing down upon us all. Pallid faces standing there, acts of contrition of the love of God, an indescribable moment. We feel it. We remain dominated by it. But it is not possible to describe it.
What did you do, Mr. Mendez?
As I said, it had been raining. I was wearing a waterproof coat and a waterproof trench coat. I was filled with curiosity and emotion, and with the same impulse that I felt in September, I pressed forward and took little Lucia up in my arms and put her on my shoulder. Now, contrary to her actions of September 13th, from my shoulder, as if under the inspiration and fulfillment of an order she had received, she cried out, "Our Lady wants the people to pray and do penance." She said it over and over, adding, "If this is done, the war will end." I resolved at that moment, as long as my health allowed, to work at Fatima in some useful way.
Did the message of Fatima and of the miracle of the sun affect others who saw it?
What I saw at Fatima could not help but affect my interior life, and I am sure that all who saw the miracle, or even heard about it, cannot fail to be impressed by its greatness. I still remember it today as vividly as the moment it happened, and I feel myself dominated by that extraordinary event seen on the 13th of October 1917 at Fatima. I am not alone. All of Portugal has been deeply affected. And there it seems we have it, an answer to all of our questions asked at the start of the video. The testimony remains essentially the same, even when viewed through the mind of a logical thinker, who cannot help but testify to the miracle's greatness and the effect it had on all who bore witness. The purpose of today's investigation of the Fatima miracle is to offer us a closer and slightly more personal account of the events surrounding that incredible day. And with the aid of Maria da Carmo Menses and Maria dos Prases, who were interviewed by the author John Haffert in early 1960, we are able to do just that. Meet Maria da Carmo Menses, who was 46 years old at the time of the miracle. Her testimony is different from others who have been interviewed, since she personally knew the Fatima children and was beside them during the miracle. Suddenly the sun appeared so that we could look at it as though it were the moon. It began spinning like a fireworks wheel, making us all turn into the colors of the rainbow, even the ground itself.
Was she wet and then dry afterwards?
Yes.
Was she afraid?
No. She trusted God.
Why did she think it happened?
That people might be converted, I think. I had two of the children, Lucia and Jacinta, in my house for 8 days in August, 2 months before the miracle. They said that there would be a miracle in order that all should believe. And this I saw, with my two sons who have now died. We saw the sun spinning like fireworks. I cried out, "My God, how great is your power!" One day I had said to the children, "Alas, you are mistaken. They will fry you in oil." And they said, "We are not afraid. She does not deceive us. She is so beautiful. Sometimes she dazzles us." Other things I have witnessed since: the bombs which officials put there, and the one which was near the tree did not explode. I held one in my hands. I saw the poison that they threw into the well. I also saw 4 cures in the place of the apparition. 2 were of tuberculosis, one of a girl from Lisbon, and the other from Alfarolos. 2 were crippled girls.
It was Mrs. Minces who remembers with joy that not only did 2 of the children spend a week in her house, but that it was she who gave them the skirts with the white spots, and a blouse and scarf and an apron to each one, clothing now familiar to many from photographs of the poor mountain children. With Mrs. Minces' account of the events, we can visualize the calmness that surrounded and shrouded the children, while all others were unsure of what was happening around them. Filled with disbelief and fear, the children were confident and calm. The next witness we turn to today is Maria dos Prazeres, who was 31 years of age when the miracles took place. Maria was a widow living near Fatima, about an hour's walk from the place where the miracle happened.
Were you close to the children?
I saw them come. I was close enough to hear them speak and to understand everything they said.
What happened?
I saw the sun turn upon itself. It seemed to fall from the sky. Near me there was a man and a lady who were looking at the sun through binoculars and who were saying that they saw a ladder near the sun and that Saint Joseph and the child Jesus were there. The people around me were crying that the world was going to end. I knew that something extraordinary and mysterious had happened. I was sure that the children had spoken to someone extraordinary who was not of this world.
According to those interviewing her, Maria seemed particularly impressed by the fact that the children had predicted something would happen.
The little shepherds had announced in advance that there would be a miracle in October, so that everyone would believe.
And believe they did. Tales of what happened that day spread far and wide like wildfire, and before long it was a rumor no more. It became the narration of a fact more widely accepted as true than the negative propaganda in its day. As one of the few widely covered and documented miracles in our modern time, it holds a particularly important message for all. And those who bore witness to this stupendous event of 1917 ardently desire that we never forget it. Throughout this series, we have explored the testimonies of many secret witnesses. We've heard the story of the miracle of the sun through the eyes of them all. Today, you will meet 2 of the witnesses who were no more than 10 feet away from the 3 children of Fatima, and you will hear the very words and testimony of Lucia herself. One of the 2 who were close enough to hear the children was Jose Joaquim de Silva. During his interview, Jose recounts that on that day it was raining, that there was a great deal of mud, and that he was soaked. He saw the children kneeling in front of the tree, staring at someone unseen. In his own words,
I heard them speaking.
What happened?
We could look at the sun without difficulty. The sky became clear. I was not afraid, but I thought that there was something extraordinary. Persons around me who were seeing something extraordinary cried with fear. They were saying that the world was going to end.
What was your personal reaction?
I had the conviction that the children were not mistaken, and that we were not mistaken either. I thought that God had, on that day, caused many people to see something extraordinary.
The second witness standing close to the children was Joaquim de Silva Jorge, who had joined the great crowd on the 6-hour trek through the rain that October 13th from Lieria to the top of the mountain. At the time of his statement, he was retired farmer of 80 years. He already was approaching middle age on that eventful day in 1917 when he pushed through the crowd to a place near the children.
I saw a dark cloud coming from the sky, and then there opened a firework of sun that was coming from the east. Suddenly, the ground was blue.
Did you experience anything else?
I was all wet, and afterwards, my clothes were quite dry.
Did you expect this miracle to happen?
No. I expected something, but I didn't know what.
Were you afraid?
I thought it was the end of the world.
What effect did it have on you?
My faith increased. I visited and still visit very often the place of the apparitions.
Do you know of anyone who did not see it?
I don't. Everyone has seen it.
The compiler of the Testimonials this series is based on is perhaps the only living American layman privileged to have talked with the child who predicted the miracle. For this reason, it is fitting that we close this episode with a description of what the 3 shepherd children actually saw in the words of Lucia herself. The children's families had come that day of the miracle to protect them, because generally it was felt that the children would suffer bodily harm, either from the soldiers before the time of the miracle, or from the crowd if the miracle did not come as predicted. But the children were not afraid. They were confident that their vision would happen, and that Our Lady would keep her promise and perform a miracle. During an interview with Lucia in 1946, the author presented a picture of the miracle of the sun, prepared by an artist. He hoped that she would be able to confirm that the picture was what she had seen, or describe in what way the picture differed from reality. He made the following notes on the back of the picture as she talked. Suddenly the vision rose from the top of the tree with light streaming from her hands. The light reflected back from the sky, much stronger than the sun. Figures in light appeared. Our Lady as she had always appeared to us. Saint Joseph holding the infant in light with Our Lady, both Saint Joseph and the infant blessing the crowd. The light changes, and suddenly Our Lady becomes Our Lady of Sorrows. Saint Joseph is replaced by our Lord, and our Lord blesses the crowd. And then the light changes again, and Our Lady becomes Our Lady of Mount Carmel. While our Lord remains, the light fades. We hear people shouting. I think that was what the people saw, had been a reflection of the brilliance of the vision, she explained. Immediately after, she had been filled with an overwhelming desire to tell all the world that war is a punishment for sins, and that men must do penance and cease offending God. She remembers that a man suddenly picked her up and put her on his shoulder. She took advantage of this position to ask all who saw the miracle to pray and do penance. In this moment, Lucia was quite different from the child who, during the previous months, had always tried to run and hide from the crowds of people who pressed to see her and her cousins. After October 13th, 1917, she once again became a shy, reserved child, afflicted by the publicity. Saddened by the prophecy that Francesco and Jacinta would soon die and she would be left alone. That day of the interview, however, in the peace and security of a Carmelite convent, she was childlike and humbled. Something we have yet to address in this series is what the Fatima miracle looked like from an atheist's point of view. We'll attempt to rectify that in today's episode by taking a step back and viewing the miracle through the events surrounding it, the government's reaction to its prophesied arrival, and what a varied collection of scientists had to say about that fateful day in October 1917. A clique which denied the existence of God and held that religion was a stumbling block to social progress, had come to power in Portugal 7 years before the miracle. Its symbols were the triangle and the red star. Its gospel was from the pages of free thought and Marxism. One of the principal Portuguese newspapers of the time was O Século, or The Century, published in Lisbon. Through this newspaper, the government had discouraged all travel to Fatima with suggestions of violence and danger. Soldiers armed with pointed bayonets were placed around the top of the mountain to prevent crowds from assembling. As we remember from Mr. Reyes' testimony, however, and moreover, the government bullies had tried to persuade the children to retract their prophecy, and during 48 hours of imprisonment, the children withstood all threats and cajoleries. Word of this spread through the country and even beyond the borders of Portugal. This, coupled with the strange events reported to have been seen on the mountain, largely explains why such a tremendous crowd braved a cold rain to climb with donkeys, cars, and carts, but the vast majority on foot, up the heights of the bleak mountain, 90 miles beyond Lisbon, on October 13th, 1917. On this same October 13th, another revolution was reaching its climax on the other side of Europe. That revolution, too, had its symbols a red star, and its slogan were the same as those which had echoed here in Portugal just 7 years before. Long live liberty! Down with religion! Long live democracy! Even more significant, the proponents of this atheistic revolution, now breaking out on the other side of the world, proclaimed it a world revolution. The Red Star was predicted to rise over mankind before peace would come. Much in the doctrine of this Red Star revolution held appeal to the masses of the world. It had as its slogan, "You have nothing to lose but your chains." It made poverty the world's only sin. It offered common distribution of wealth as the key to world peace and happiness. The children claimed that their visitor from heaven spoke of sins more awful than poverty. They said that shining from the hem of her robe was a great star, not a red star, but a star of light. And she spoke of what was going to happen in Russia and of wars which would come. And she was going to perform a public miracle so that all may believe. What was the effect of the miracle on the unbelievers? Well, there are at least 7 scientifically objective facts. 1. The time and place of this event were predicted in advance. 2. A light of extraordinary power was seen over a radius of more than 20 miles like a wheel of fireworks, sending off great shafts of colored light which tinted objects on the ground. 3. It plummeted toward the earth after several minutes, assuming such a gigantic nearness that tens of thousands of witnesses thought it was the end of the world. 4. The great ball of fire stopped just as it was about to crash upon the earth and returned into the sky. 5th, it came from and went back to the location of the sun, so that those who saw it actually thought it was a sun. 6th, the top of the mountain where this occurred, which had been drenched by several hours of constant rain, suddenly dried within a matter of minutes. 7th, tens of thousands of witnesses of all classes and of all various creeds extended over an area of about 600 square miles. Colonel Frederico Ohm, professor of the Faculty of Sciences and director of the Lisbon Observatory, stated, "If it were a cosmic phenomenon, astronomical and meteorological observatories would not have failed to record it. And this is precisely what is missing. That inevitable recording of all the disturbances in the world system, no matter how small they may be." Asked if this phenomenon was of a psychological nature, the scientist replied that it might have been, but as an astronomer, he could definitely affirm one thing.
It is completely foreign to the branch of science that I cultivate.
This statement by Colonel Ohm was published in O Seculo in Lisbon shortly after the miracle occurred, with the intention of giving the only possible explanation which science could offer: collective suggestion. However, as the evidence has been studied and evaluated, it becomes absolutely certain that the phenomenon was not the result of mass hypnosis or collective suggestion. The reasons are: 1. It was witnessed over a large area by persons not in the crowd. 2. Among the crowd were scientists and non-believers who viewed the phenomenon not only with objectivity, but with particular care to protect themselves from the possibility of collective suggestion. For example, we have the Baron of Alvazier, who carefully took all the precautions outlined by Gustavo Le Bon in his Psychology of the Crowd. The Baron had not expected a miracle and wanted to be sure that he would not be the victim of suggestion. He died in 1955, and in a deposition to the Canonical Committee, he stated,
An indescribable impression overtook me. I only know that I cried out, I believe, I believe, I believe, and tears ran from my eyes. I was amazed, in ecstasy before the demonstration of divine power converted me in that moment.
Dr. Garrett, a professor from the University of Coimbra, in detailed testimony describes that he feared some impairment to his retina, covered his eyes, and turned in an opposite direction, opened his eyes again, and continued to see the miracle. Several other men of science who were actual witnesses testified to the objective reality of the phenomenon and added that no natural explanation could be given.
Of the historic reality of this event, there can be no doubt whatsoever. That it was outside and against known laws can be proved by certain simple scientific considerations. Given the undubitable reference to God and the general context of the event, it seems that we must attribute to him alone the most obvious and colossal miracle of history.
And there we have it. With the testimonies of countless witnesses ranging from both believers and atheists, we can weigh the words of everyone and still find the common thread. Amidst the shock and awe, mystery and elation, there was something tangible there. And that something changed everything for this small town in Portugal and altered the course of history for the world. Over the course of this series, we have attempted to cover all the bases concerning the Fatima phenomenon. We have approached it from multiple directions, viewed it through the eyes of many witnesses, and successfully, I believe, given an adequate idea of what occurred on that fateful day of October 13th, 1917. The last inquiry we have yet to explore in the subject of this final episode is the question, what did it prove? A good question, and immensely important to the overall weight and purpose of the Fatima message and miracle. When asked why they thought the miracle occurred, all witnesses gave a similar answer.
So that we might believe.
If we accept this as caused by God, then we must accept two corollaries: the reality of the children's apparitions and the authenticity of the message. Apparitions as such are not uncommon, and upon examination we find that the apparitions of Fatima were never referred to by the children as particularly significant. In all 6 apparitions, no special significance was attached to the appearance of the apparition. The apparition wore a brilliant star at the hem of the robe and a golden globe suspended around the neck. Yet no explanation was given to the globe and the star. There is reason to believe that the globe represented the world and that the star represented the red star of Russia, which the apparition had promised to change into a star of light if certain conditions are fulfilled. But again, there is something we only can assume from the message. So, we conclude that the apparition, as such, was of secondary importance, and that the miracle was primarily wrought to prove the message brought by the apparition to the world. But what exactly was this message? In summary, the message is this:
there is a heaven and an eternal state of separation from God. And at the present time, many, many souls are going to hell because there is no one to pray and to make sacrifices for them. 2. World War I was going to end, but a second World War would begin within the reign of the next pope. The world would know this second and more terrible war was about to begin when a strange light appeared in the sky. This light appeared on January 17th, 1939, and caused consternation throughout Europe. 3 months later, Hitler marched into Austria. 3. Error will spread from Russia, through atheists instigating further war. 4. The Pope will suffer much. 5. The good will be persecuted. 6. Several nations will be annihilated. However, and this seems to be the most important part of the message, the above occurrences will take place only if this message is not heeded by the world, and, in particular, if a sufficient number of persons do not cease offending God. 8. If men do heed this message the vision promises, Russia will be converted, and there will be peace.
The key factor in heeding this message is essentially repairing our relationship with and fixing the way we view God. It is the same today as it was when Moses came down from Mount Sinai. It is the same today as when Sodom and Gomorrah were annihilated. 1/3 of the nations of the world are now controlled by men who take children from their families and educate them to deny God. They are atheists who build armies such as man never dreamed possible, armed with weapons capable of destroying all life on the planet. And they have vowed to wipe out religion from the earth, like the first Red Star Revolution in a tiny nation where the miracle of the sun occurred for us in the free world, and for all those who have been enslaved in the red world. The miracle speaks. It reminds us that God exists and that man rejects him not only in the absolute heresy of communism, but whenever he disobeys and neglects God. Very few of those who witness the miracle will hesitate to admit, even after all these years, that they were afraid. Yet even in the same breath with which we speak of the terrible fear of the miracle caused, they also spoke of something equally extreme and marvelous: hope. The crowd expected to be destroyed at that moment, but were not. Even the discomfort experienced in the cold rain was suddenly lifted. They were exalted with a great joy, the supernatural, the joy of believing that God is in his heaven and that all would be right in the world if the message of Fatima is terrible and is also filled with the greatest hope the atomic age could possibly have. Indeed, should all the most terrible things prophesied come to pass, we are promised that ultimately there will be peace. Thus, the miracle of the sun is rather an explosion of hope than of fear. And herein lies a choice that must be made. At this crucial moment of history, by each of us, if we lose this struggle, it will be because we remained neutral, because we stood on the sidelines and wondered about it all. Were we shocked to see China fall to communism? Yet shocked though we may have been by communist expansion, what have we done? Have we said any extra prayers? Have we realized that this struggle was a spiritual one, with the enemy bending its primary attack on God himself? Have we made any reparations? Have we stopped being neutral and chosen sides? Let us choose now. This is one of the greatest opportunities given to those who hear the messages of Fatima. The ability to choose. Choose to pray. Choose Our Lady's love. Choose hope. Thank you all for being a part in this exploration of the Fatima miracle. I hope this has helped you learn something from the Fatima message. And that at the end of the day, when you have made your choice, you remain steadfast in your resolve. Thank you all. May God bless you, and may Our Lady keep you under her mantle. God love you.